Hello there, and welcome. My name is Alexander, and you are listening to another realization. I wanted to make this very interoceptive video to address the mindset of those who believe in the legitimacy of authority over others, in the form of governments. People who believe government is necessary and therefore condone the perpetuation of various decrees that are enforced by authority figures in society, which we superficially call mandates that are issued by authority, which is meant to reveal the dishonesty and self-contradiction people actually go through when they adopt the notion that something should be enforced upon others under the rubric of a mandate, which is a euphemism that is commonly substituted for something that is quite severe, which is contradistinct to how people normally view human interaction. And people are aware of it, as I'll mention later on. Yet it purposely confounds the very immoral acts that people actually condone through countenancing mandates issued by authority. Allow me to briefly explain what I mean by that. When people say that they want and approve of mandatory vaccination across the country, or even across the entire world, what do they actually mean by that? What is the specific action that you want to have done? That you want to have done unto someone else in this case? Because this always implies the life of another that you want to interfere with. Now, void of any euphemisms, there seems to be a reluctance to be honest about what they actually want by condoning mandatory vaccination. So when you directly inquire the following, what do you mean by vaccine should be mandatory? The answer would be on equal footing with, well, that they should be required. Well, what do you actually mean by that? Well, that they should be required and that everyone should have it, period. And herein lies the blatant circumvention. They aren't answering my question. They are applying the logical fallacy of begging the question, so that they do not have to be honest about what they condone. Now here is what someone would say if they were honest about their support of mandatory vaccines. I think the free will choice of another being not to have something placed into their body should be removed from that being, and instead I am going to decide what you are going to put into your body, and if someone refuses that dictate, I want someone to come to their property with whatever amount of force is necessary to hold them down and force the substance into their body. And if they resist with defensive force, they deserve to be murdered. Now, doesn't that sound absolutely brutal? Of course it does, because it is. Yet that is the exact immorality that you are supporting if you are proponents of vaccine mandates. But in lieu of having to admit that, they use the euphemism of vaccine should be mandatory. Well, doesn't that sound more pleasing than the former? Which reveals the obvious Freudian slip. It reveals the immorality that they condone. If you are proponents of mandatory vaccination, you have total disregard for the bodily autonomy of another. You think that what belongs to them, or they themselves, as a being for that matter, belongs to you, that you own them, and that you own their choices, if you're honest with yourself. And yet people don't choose to speak it out like that. Now, why would they do that? Why would they circumvent the simple and obvious truth of what they say they want? Because they'd recognize that it's immoral. They'd realize that it's evil. So this terrible feeling about themselves starts gnawing at them, and then they try to sweep it under the rug by way of euphemization. In earnest, many people are not in any way supporters of mandatory vaccination. But does that mean that you're honest about other things you might condone? If you believe that people should wear masks or be fined for not doing so, you condone the exact same behavior. Because you're not just advocating for a letter to be sent to their house that says that you have to pay this amount of money, because they don't have to pay that, even if you say they should. But that's not as far as it goes. You want something done to them for not complying with the rule you advocate. In earnest, you want men with guns to come to their house, kick down their door, and drag them away from their family and lock them up for a long time. That's what you advocate if you want people to be fined for whatever it is that you want them to be fined for, and when they choose not to comply with it. In this case, for not wearing a face mask. It doesn't matter if the face mask is detrimental to your health or not. You want their ability to use their free will to choose what they do with their own body forcibly taken away from them, and you want them to wear something on their face under the threat of very bad things being done to them by the ruling class. But then again, many people might not advocate mask mandates as well. But still, that doesn't exclude the fact that you're honest about many other things. So many people might want to have something funded, be it infrastructure, education, military, feeding the poor, etc. Whatever it might be, people want to have it funded, and there is nothing wrong with wanting that. I also want there to be no poverty, and I want various other things to be funded as well. But this is where I deviate from the John Q. public, because in society today it goes beyond wanting something. It delves into the realm of insisting and demanding. In this case, that other people should forcibly be coerced to fund the things you want by way of taxation. And this reveals the Freudian slip again. It reveals the darker side behind the things you want, that many people are loath to even acknowledge, and therefore choose to sweep it under the rug. And the same goes for prohibiting and restricting. Yet if we discard the euphemisms and actually and plainly say what you condone in order to have things go your way in the world, the same obnoxious behaviors are laid bare. Many people might want other people to be prohibited from using certain drugs like marijuana. So instead of using the euphemism prohibition, say out loud what you want to have done unto the person who smokes marijuana. If you believe in prohibition, then you say, I want people to be threatened with violence for using marijuana. And if they still get caught using it in the form of THC oil to cure someone from a fatal illness, for instance, or by smoking it, I want a group of people with guns to go to that person's living place, kick down their door, take them away from their family, and cage them for a long time. If you're truly honest, that's what you say when you condone prohibition. Whether it be alcohol or any other substance, it matters not, because it's their body. They decide what they put into it, not you, not anyone, not even the majority. And if you still don't understand that, don't use euphemisms like prohibition. Say it like I just said it, without mincing any words, because then you would realize the absurdities that you condone. Allow me to show you an example of what true radical honesty looks like when I am asked the question. If I want to have a bridge here so that I don't have to drive 3 miles to get to the other side, I would set up a fundraiser with all the people in the vicinity to pay a construction company to build a solid bridge there, for our convenience. I would fund it, but a person that lives 30 miles away might not want to spend his money on something he's never going to make use of anyway. So why should he? If there are people who don't want to fund that bridge, do you know what I want to have done unto them? Absolutely nothing. That's your choice. It's your resources. It's your precious time and attention you spent in exchange for those resources. So it's totally up to you to make up what you do with it, and to choose what to fund or what not to fund. So I might get upset with the person for not funding my bridge, but guess what? I don't want people with guns to show up at his house and take him away from his family and lock him up for several years, because that would be appalling. I want them to have full autonomy, and there is no advocacy of violence being done unto them whatsoever, which is the only moral way to live harmoniously together. And incidentally, it is also the most judicious way. People could choose what they want to fund themselves, because they would know where the money goes, to what company it goes, if it's a good company with a good reputation, that is not corrupt and doesn't commit fraud, how much money they would be spending. People would have full disclosure in lieu of forced taxation by governments that you condone, where you're being threatened with violence if you don't give away your money. You don't know if the money even goes to the thing you want, or if it goes to corrupt banking institutions, large unrelated corporations, a war machine that is used to wage war in other countries and murder innocent people in the multitudes and destroy their livelihoods. You don't even know if you're actually paying for something valuable at the cost that you are demanded to pay for it. You don't even know how much even goes there. It simply takes it and treats it as its own property, when it's not, because it completely minifies and disregards the time and attention you spent in exchange for those resources. You gave a part of your life in exchange for those resources, and you alone own those resources. And if you disagree, then be honest about the fact that you are owned by someone else. Be honest about what you believe should be people's way of living, that your life is simply property of some government, and that you cannot make decisions about the things you gave a piece of your life for, that they own it, that they own you, which makes you, by definition, a slave of someone else. Be honest about what you want. If you advocate taxation, you believe that the fruits of people's labor, that they gave their time, energy, and attention for, which is literally a part of their life, should be taken away from them at the behest of someone else, because you believe it belongs to them or to you, if you are an advocate of democracy, which in turn makes them own the person being taxed. And the ownership of another being is slavery. That's what you support by advocating taxation. It incidentally contains the word taxing, as in something very cumbersome and difficult, i.e., you want people's lives to be cumbersome and difficult. So if you do want people to be forced to fund the things you want to have funded, in the current form of taxation, the forced confiscation of wealth, that's what you advocate. That people with guns show up at their house, kick down their door, kidnap them, and cage them away for several years. You advocate immoral behaviors. You advocate violence. And for those who say, violence? What are you talking about, violence? That's not violence. They do that unto themselves for not complying and for being tax evaders. Well, consider the following. If a burglar walked up to you with a firearm and forced you to hand over your money, and let's say he explained to you that he was going to use it for the common good, to feed the poor, and you refused and subsequently got shot, and they took your money and drove off, how would you react if I would say, he wasn't violent, you did that to yourself for not giving the gentleman your money? Well, that is what you sound like. The only difference being that one wears a shiny metal badge with a symbol on it, and the other one doesn't. Not even the demeanor. They're both shouting at you like the criminals they are. But how does a shiny little badge with a symbol on it give someone else the moral right to physically assault, kidnap, murder, and steal from people? In truth, it doesn't. If I make the same metal badge with a different symbol on it, it wouldn't give me such rights. But that symbol is special. Do you want to know what that's called? It is called a religion. You revere symbols and written texts, with the only difference being the names used. Things I couldn't do in reality because I don't have that right. Someone else can do, merely because they wear a symbol or represent a scribble called a law. Which isn't a law, by the way, it's a statute. So in lieu of using the political parlance that you've been trained to use, and have been trained to substitute for the crimes that are actually being committed, I ask you to bluntly state what you advocate and be honest about what you believe in and about what you support. And if you think that someone who has not harmed anyone deserves to have harm done unto them for not doing what you insist they should do according to your likes or dislikes, You support the initiation of violence unto innocent people, which in turn makes you immoral, and in turn makes you one of the bad guys. How dare you? Well, just be honest again. Would you go to my house with guns and kick down my door if I didn't open and drag me away from my family and lock me up somewhere because I didn't want to fund what you wanted me to fund? I'm sure you wouldn't, certainly not if you view yourself as one of the good guys. But how would that suddenly be more justifiable if you pick a group of people and give them the artillery to do it, instead of you? And then you and your ilk say that they have the right to do that. Well, why? How did they get it? Well, because we all agreed to that. Now here's the truth. You do not want to be responsible for your own actions and step up and do the harm yourself, because you know how bad that is, and you think that you can delegate that responsibility and let other people do it for you and all agree that they magically have that right, that you wouldn't have as a single individual, because that's what policing is, which is just a euphemism for violence. How about being a responsible adult and accepting things the way they are, instead of being a small infant who wishes that some paternal father figure, called government, uses its illusory rights to forcibly take from other people what belongs to them and use it for the things you want, or that people should have their lives threatened under duress and should have violence done unto them for doing something you do not want them to do, and wanting everything to go your way without taking other people's volition or rights into consideration whatsoever. That's exactly how a small child views the world. Grow up and learn to behave like a responsible adult, and accept that things don't always go your way. If you want certain things to be funded and want to have real crooks apprehended, me too, I want that too, but be an adult. If you want it, arrange what you can in order to get it. If not, accept it as it is or try another way. That does not involve harm being done unto innocent people, even if it is for a good cause. Doing good by doing bad will never be sustainable and moral. The only moral way is voluntary, a society that is thoroughly based on voluntary interaction, without any interference from a central authority. That is real freedom, which can be manifested, but only when people cease to behave like whiny little children who want everything to go their way, and start behaving like responsible adults that can work and interact together to bring about a peaceful coexistence, without coercion and without violence. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.